everybody. I think it's mostly morning for everybody who's joining us today still. We are really excited to have you here for our session on driving adoption of new technology and how not to just launch it, but how to get people to continue to come back to these solutions and make sure that you're really able to deliver the ROI on this type of an investment. Today's session, well, we're going to have some slides and we're going to definitely share some best practices and some keys to driving this adoption. We also want this to be a discussion and a conversation, so you can feel free to engage however you want. But certainly, if you have a question, if you have something you want to share, a best practice, a really positive experience, let us know. Raise a hand, turn the mic on, interrupt us. We definitely want this to be a conversation in addition to Jason and I presenting some of our experience and what we've got to offer today. So to kick things off, we'll introduce ourselves. So I am Amy Jenkins. I am currently the Director of Client Success and Strategy at theEMPLOYEEapp, also with Engagedly now. So for those of you who are familiar with the theEMPLOYEEapp, we were acquired by Engagedly back in November of 2023. We've had a few fantastic months together so far. We're working on some really exciting things. I'm so glad to be part of the Engagedly organization and family. There's exciting things to come for us. But we have the same, similar challenges with introducing HR communications technology to both desk-bound and deskless workforces. And so it makes a lot of sense to bring this together and bring both our clients and those outside to learn more about how we do this effectively. Just a little bit more background on me. I am internal communications is my field of study and where my passion comes from, especially employee communications. I led employee communications at Chipotle for over a decade. Loved that experience, launched the theEMPLOYEEapp while I was there, and eventually came on board to help other clients successfully develop strategies and deploy their employee apps as well. I'm really excited to introduce you all to Jason Whitehead, who I am very fortunate to get to work with every day. So Jason, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. As Amy said, I'm Jason Whitehead. I'm the Interim VP of Customer Experience here at Engagedly. Previously to this role, I've been in consulting for many years, helping to drive adoption of technology, working with many buyers of organizations to help them come in before they even get started to plan out how to have successful adoption and successful implementations, as well as working with a lot of organizations of various sizes, helping to turn around implementations where the adoption's been quite disappointing. So I'm really excited to be here today and share some ideas, and if you have questions, let's share those as well too. So thank you so much.
All right. So some of the things we really want to make sure that you take away from today, in addition to hopefully a really strong conversation, is the ability to identify your organization's drivers and limiters to adoption and ongoing usage. Oftentimes we release technology and we think that's it. Yay, everybody's got it in their hands and it's going to work. But there's things that will get in your way, and it's important to be able to acknowledge those and account for them when you're planning for a successful deployment. We also want to talk about goals. You got to start with goals. We have to have a reason why we launched this and some plans on how it's going to impact not only our teams and the reason that we're launching it to drive some efficiency, but also how is it going to help our organization at large? How can we line up the success of this new initiative with the overall success of our organization? We're going to talk about the 6-step process to driving adoption. This is something Jason is an expert in, so I'm excited for him to walk us through these 6 steps. It lays it out really easily, the things that we need to follow, not just at launch, not just on go live day, but well beyond that, and how we continue to drive that sustained usage. We're also going to talk about who you need to engage as part of this program. We want you to walk away knowing who are some people maybe you haven't talked to across the organization that can help you drive this success. It cannot be a one-man or even a one-team show. And finally, how do you pivot? If it's not working, you don't want to live in that world of, we'll just keep trying, we'll just keep trying. What are some things that you can do to identify we need to make a change? And then how do you actually initiate that change across the organization? All right, so let's talk a little bit about why you're investing in new technology. And Jason, as you've been involved in so many launches of different platforms in your consulting roles, you've kind of identified there's these 3 things that kind of happen, right? That get us to this place of, why are we trying to launch a new solution?
Yep, I think this comes up quite a bit, and inevitably it bounces into one of the buckets here. We want to do things cheaper, faster, better. more strategically or help a specific department. But I think one of the challenges that often happens as well too is people will decide at the executive level or the buying level, hey, we need to invest in a technology to solve some of these problems, and they assume it will just sort of happen, but they don't actually communicate out and down why they're trying to achieve this, what they're trying to achieve, and what that looks like, and really how end users contribute to that, and how managers and supervisors contribute to that. So I think that's one of the big challenges that we find there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the second bullet there too about improving employee experience, right? It's something that all of our organizations are really focused on right now. We know that people are the core of our business, no matter what it is that we do, whether we're in healthcare and we're providing patient services, or we're in sales and we're out there trying to meet a quota. It is all about having people meet their goals, right? And not only just achieve those results, but do it in a way that makes them and I don't necessarily like to use the word like enjoying their job, but feeling accomplished, feeling valued, feeling like what they do matters, and therefore they want to stay, right? I mean, at the end of the day, so much of what we want to measure against in HR is around retention. How do we get people to stay with our organization, grow with us, develop with us, and see their future within our existing businesses? So technology, I think, is a big piece of that. It can create those efficiencies. It can improve that effectiveness in our roles. And give us that place that we aren't looking through 25 different systems to get to an answer. We can hopefully get to it through one or two, and not just improve our work life, but also our personal life, right? Our benefits information, when's my time off request form? How do I get reimbursed for these expenses? Those types of things also can be improved through technology if we do things in the right way. But technology is not the silver bullet. um, and so I think it's important to speak through that. And would be a great opportunity for any of you to chime into, or if you saw something, you launched a new solution and thought this is going to change the world. It's going to be everything for everyone. And soon realized that something got in the way of that. Right. So I love this line that technology is a great enabler of improved performance, but it is only an enabler. So it's really up to us as the leads of these programs and systems to come out and make sure that we drive it in a way that's going to stick. Right, Jason?
Absolutely. I think whenever I talk with folks too, it's about technology enables behavior change. It enables you to change where you spend your time, when you engage with others, how you do it. Also, when people can see when you're doing your job or when you're using technology and when you're not. So it really does help provide a lot of visibility. But it doesn't guarantee outcomes. And I think so many organizations fall into the trap of, we provided these capabilities, we provided these tools. Why aren't people just doing that? Why aren't they just using it? And when I think of trying to get people to adopt technology, it's kind of like, imagine you're trying to get a New Year's resolution to stick, like, eat healthier, lose weight, go to the gym, all the stuff that, is always a challenge. And then try and imagine you're trying to get every single person in your organization to make that same goal and stick with it so that you're all doing things in sync. And it's really a huge behavior change for a lot of folks that you're trying to orchestrate at once. And I think when you start to look through the lens of behavior change, it opens up a lot of possibilities for, we can try this instead, we can try that instead. But also we're enabling bad behaviors to continue. Where are you enabling people to continue doing things the same way instead of moving to new processes that are better for everyone and more effective and more efficient? So that's one lens that I like to look at. But again, a feature that isn't used or adopted is kind of meaningless. So I try to think of it in that lens as well, too.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think it's important to identify, and we'll dive into this a little deeper throughout the presentation, but what is the value add, right? Why should somebody want to make that step to change? And what is it, we can focus on what it'll do for our organization as a whole, but what is it going to do for each person individually, too? Because that's where a lot of that motivation comes from.
Right. Let me ask everyone here, you can jump in and just chime in or put in the chat. To what degree do you think the leaders in your organization understand that technology is just an enabler, or do they expect we've deployed this, it will just naturally get uptake on its own?
I think on our end, I think a lot of them are pretty aware of the benefit that, it would ultimately serve. I guess kind of in regards to that, our kind of internal page, on our site, is really helpful. But as you all know, when you're dealing with a web page with all kinds of ins and outs, you can lay it out pretty well, but it's still going to be hard to find stuff, a lot of the time. And I know one of the things that we're kind of looking at in the next year, at least in the Hub app, is to sort of incorporate some of those operational kind of forms or, the department and provider policies into the hub. And we're hoping that'll kind of make it a little bit easier to find stuff, if that makes sense. And I think that's definitely something on their mind, as well, kind of cleaning that up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be easy to use, right? I mean, if you have to walk through and teach people how to do something every time, it makes it challenging. It's got to be simple. And I love that you're looking at how you bring in the operational use cases too. That's something we'll get to in a little bit, but that's a huge one in driving engagement to resources like the employee app. And others. It's got to be, this helps me do something better, easier, faster.
A couple things I love about that too is I often hear the term buy-in and executive buy-in. And whenever I see that word, it's kind of like nails on the chalkboard for me. And I always ask people, what do you mean by that? Because in my experience, there's a lot of times, and this isn't always, but in many organizations, they say they have buy-in, but then when it comes right down to it, they don't actually do anything. And I usually suggest to people saying you have buy-in without some sort of observable action is BS, is basically. And by observable actions, what does that mean? That means, the leader has provided their time and effort and focused their attention and drawn attention from others here. They've put resources to it. They've put budget to it. They've put whatever they need to make this a success, as opposed to just sort of the head nod, like, oh yeah, we need to do that, someone should make that happen, and just delegating, but setting clear expectations. So if you have observable actions, that really is a good sign that you have buy-in. And if your leader doesn't know what actions to take, whoever is really spearheading the implementation needs to suggest them to them, give them some action plans. This is what it takes to be bought into it. Are you committed to this kind of thing? So that's an easy one there. And some other great comments here as well too. Dante, engaging the executive administrators in my org has proven to be the foundation. I think that's a great one. One of the things we'll talk about a little bit later is also driving supervisors to drive adoption. But having the right proxies with the right influence that can really get people going is very critical. So thank you for sharing that one as well.
Yeah, and executives supporting the voice for the technology, right? We'll hit this home several times too today, is the not being a one and done, right? You've got to find ways for those executives to continue to push people into those solutions, right? So if we're talking about the employee app specifically, if we've got a town hall talking about the slides are going to be available in the employee app when the session's over, or this, specific topic that we're discussing, you can get more information about it if you go into your employee app. Those types of things are going to remind people, oh yeah, that's where I'm supposed to go, right? Continuing to push people through the solution in the long term to help them find that value there continuously is critical to getting that ongoing and creating those habits, right? Building habits for employees to continue to want to use these tools. So the 6-step adoption process, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce everybody to this.
Awesome. So I'll jump through this and we'll do a quick overview, and we have some details behind each one, but we don't want to make this a entire slide-based discussion. So if there are areas where you have any deep questions, please chime in and let us know in the chat, or just unmuting as well. So one of the things that I found when I worked with organizations that, and I studied information systems all the way through, is a lot of implementation methodologies are focused on going live and ideally on time and on budget. And that's normally where they stop. And a lot of methodologies are like, oh, well, we've trained people on it. They know how to use the system. They should just do it. And instead, what I try to look at is really, what is the methodology that you need to take to get people to adopt it, improve value, and sustain that value year over year? So obviously, step one is exactly what you would think would be defining success. And that really starts with what we mentioned before. What are those business outcomes that you're looking to achieve from an organizational point of view? What justified this investment in technology that said we had a problem we need to solve, and this is how we're going to do it, and here's the benefits? And using that to cascade down that, what does this mean for this department, for this team, and this user? And helping them to understand the definitions of success and what's expected of them in terms of usage to guarantee that success. The second piece, when I go into an organization, I ask them, well, tell me, who is accountable for making sure that 6 months or a year from now, that people are using this application and that you're getting the outcomes that you wanted? And how do you measure, and when do you measure? And typically crickets, absolutely crickets. Like, oh, well, we don't actually assign anyone for that. In fact, I've worked for I did a project with one Fortune 100 organization. They were implementing a CRM system over 10 years and investing over $1 billion in an organizational transformation spearheaded by technology. They had a lot of structured process to get all their money and approval. because $1 billion is real money. But I asked them, when do you go back to measure and who's accountable? And they're like, well, no one. We don't really care about that. So that was very concerning to me. But then step 3 is really analyzing what is it going to take to drive this adoption and to get a success that we want. And looking at sort of 2 things. I sort of break this down into ability times motivation. Can people use it and will they use it? And 9 times out of 10, you will find some sort of structural barrier, some organization impediment prevents people from using the technology, even if they want to. And you need to make sure that you have a way to identify those and remove them. Step 4 is not surprising. Come up with a plan for who's going to do what to drive this adoption, communicate the message, ask for the behaviors we want, take action if we don't get them, and move forward. So how does that work, and what are the big moving parts? For smaller systems and smaller implementations, that can be pretty flexible, but if you're a large organization with multiple offices and thousands of employees in different locations, you need more structure to it. Otherwise, it probably won't happen organically. Step 5, obviously, is go and execute and start to work on it and go and execute against your plan before, during, and after a go live. And then step 6 is evaluate and evolve. Measure what's working, see where you need to pivot. And also your business goals, needs, and priorities will change over time. You're going to have to update your approach to make sure that you're consistent getting the value that you want. So that's just sort of the high level piece. Any thoughts or questions on that, or anything that you disagree with?
Well, let's dig a little deeper into each of these, and maybe that'll drive a little bit more conversation of where we're finding success and where we're struggling in some of these different stages within the deployment process.
Yeah.
So defining success and the AMPM method, which I really like how Jason has broken this down as well, because I think a lot of organizations get stuck in the adoption metrics and activity metrics, right, when we launch. And I'd say we're kind of guilty of that at the employee app too, of driving people toward measuring those, and sometimes stopping there with how successful they are in their deployment. But it's really important to set those performance metrics too, and defining the overall ROI, because that's what the executive team is going to look at the end of the day. That's what they want to hear about when they're talking about, are we going to continue to invest in this application and in your team and driving it forward, right? So I think those performance metrics are really critical to start with, even before we start to think about the adoption or the activity metrics.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think you can get, some people really struggle with how to measure these, like, well, we want to have employee happier, or we want to see people stay longer, or whatever it is. Great. This may not be the only thing that contributes to that, but you can still put a goal towards it. So that might be, again, employee satisfaction on a survey, or being listed as, top 100 best places to work in our community, or whatever it needs to be. But give some thought to that. Or we've reduced the time to serve from HR because people are going into the application portals and doing things on their own, as opposed to having to come to us and email. So maybe there's an efficiency play there, but be really clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And you can have multiple goals here. I recommend 2 or 3 performance metric goals initially, see what makes sense. And sometimes it's not that you're not achieving the goal, it's you're having a hard time measuring it. So do make sure it's there. And one of the things I also offer up to folks is, if you're not sure what's the right goal, go to ChatGPT, say, we're trying to create a performance measurement around this. What's a business outcome? Give us some suggestions of specific measurable metrics you'd use internally. Maybe you'll get some good ideas there. And I think as it relates to the adoption metrics, so the performance metrics is, what's the business outcome that justifies this investment in this team, in this process, and that we've gotten some values that we want from it. From that adoption metrics, I also call them trajectory metrics. These are the short-term leading indicators that say, we know that if we do these things, we are on track to achieve those performance goals that we'll care about a year from now. If we don't do these things, we know we're not going to hit those things. So that really helps to clarify really what needs to be done. And with those adoption metrics, you really can measure those down and cascade those down your organization and say, this means for end users, we want you to do X. And being very explicit in that, sort of a call to action here. And I recommend trying to get those to the point of, can we say yes or no, checkbox ready, did they do that? So for example, instead of emailing HR directly, go to the app and see this information, go to the portal. Instead, freeing up HR's time to be more strategic. If there are other areas, put in your expenses here. Here's the link. Do it while you're standing at the cash register or something like that when you're in the store after work. Great, do that. But being really clear to give people real use cases around what they should be doing. But we also mentioned this comes back to behavior change. Scenarios where they can think through where and when should they be doing this. Not just what do I need to do, but where and when should I be doing this? Oh, do this during your break. Do this when you're standing in line. Check the app to see if there's a work cancellation because of weather before you get in your car. um, make it very easy for people to incorporate it into their daily behavior and communicate those messages out. Amy, do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said, the clarity. And part of that also is how does this, if we're talking about the app specifically, but this can apply to any solution or any kind of change management initiative, how does this impact the other things that I was doing before, right? So if we're talking about communication, the employee app for our clients is typically one tool in that toolkit, right? It's one of the resources that they have to offer to employees. So it's important to talk about the differentiators, right? Why use this instead of this to get them to shift some of those gears and come out of the email world and look into the app for the culture driving content and the engagement driving pieces as well. So in addition to the when to use it, it's also the how and why to move away from some of those other systems and what they will gain from their regular activity.
So let's open this up to the group. Do you guys currently have specific metrics or objectives that you're trying to hit here, and do you communicate those out? And if you do you get to the level of performance business outcome metrics or adoption metrics?
Yeah, Tamara asked a good question. She said, what is the likelihood that these targets will change as you proceed through analysis, planning, et cetera?
I think the activity metrics are more likely to change initially. What are the activities that will get us there? But I think when you first start a project like this, you need to be pretty clear on those performance metrics that the executive team is going to look like to say, oh yeah, this was a good use of our time, money, resources. We're glad we made this investment. Because they probably have an idea in their head. And by just getting them to say, how will we measure the success a year from now or 2 years from now? You can really learn from them what's important to them as a business side. But those performance metrics may change year over year, but I would expect them to stay constant at least for first year. Emily, we have an engagement metric. Are people working with our content? Are we reaching their folks? Can we share some typical performance metrics? I think we've talked on a few around the cut down time for HR to serve, having employee satisfaction, those sort of things. Some organizations also do compliance metrics, that people completed the necessary content online and as by acknowledging it through the system. Amy, can you think of other ones that you typically see, or if others have them? This doesn't have to be just us. If everyone else has a performance type metric that's been effective.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some specifically around in engaging with content to Emily's point, we're tracking the amount of likes and comments. And I would encourage you to use that in a couple of different ways, right? That can determine your content strategy. It can help you figure out as a team where you should be spending a majority of your time. What is the content people want to engage with? And then to Jason's point earlier, how does that impact other things across the business? So if I'm putting out a post around employee recognition, and I have a lot of people engaging with that content, do I over time start to see retention increase? Or on my engagement survey, do I see more people talking about feeling valued and appreciated across the organization? So how can we take some of those, kind of more surface level, metrics and turn them into something that's bigger across the organization that does really impact change? I like Jason's example of the compliance. That's a huge one. If you're putting out safety content, right? If you're driving campaigns around employee safety or, patient satisfaction within a healthcare system, and you're putting that type of content through your technology solution, is that driving results? Are you seeing those improvements? And I would encourage you not just to look at organization-wide, but break it down by different parts of your organization as well, right? You may have one location that has just done a fantastic job of driving adoption, right? So maybe your overarching adoption percentage is 60%, but you've got one location that is at 80%, right? And they're active, they're using this app. Are there other performance metrics that you can show are higher for that specific location? Because you can draw either a direct or a dotted line correlation to they're using their technology effectively. They're using the solution effectively, and that's driving results. That helps you push to other parts of the business then to say, do what they're doing. It's working over here. If we're all doing what they're doing, we'll start to see these results expand.
I think that's really powerful. I've done that with several implementations, started with one small thing. And when we had those results, one, we learned a lot, so the process went smoother and faster all the way through, but people could believe it then because they could see it. I'm like, oh, it worked for them, it will work for us as well too. And also one last thing here before we move on to this is kindness and clarity. I think sometimes people get afraid of a conflict situation or being able to say, hey, this isn't working for us anymore, and just being very direct with folks. Frankly, cutting through the noise and just being very direct. And Amy's heard me say this many times in meetings, there's kindness and clarity. And that's usually when I drop a truth bomb that needs to come out, like, this is not working for us, or please stop doing this, or hey, please do more of this. But being very clear on expectations is absolutely essential. And there really is kindness and clarity because it's messages out there and people can hear firsthand what is expected. They don't have to guess. It takes a lot of the stress out of them. If you want people to go to the app for this instead of doing something else, say, please go to the app instead of this. It will save us time and energy. It will make us get a faster response for you. We'll do whatever it needs to do. Well, let's move on to the next one, but thank you, Julie. How do you get people to come back when the app was too slow until changes were made to make it faster? I think that's a really important question. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll kick it off and then I'll turn it over if Patty and Renee want to add any tips to that one. But first of all, that's a challenge, right? Any barrier to entry, right? Whether it's having trouble with passwords or, the app is taking a long time to load initially, we know that could be a setback for employees. And so I think the way to get them back in is not just to do a broad communication campaign to say, hey, there's been improvements. Get back in there, try it again, and maybe launch a new campaign that will drive some energy, not just around the change, but will get employees excited to try again and to come back into the solution. But in addition to the broader one, I would focus in on a few groups as well. So I would look to people managers specifically, tell them that the improvements have been made and encourage them to continue that communication push to re-engage their employees and come back into the system. Because sometimes it's that direct, communication from your boss saying, hey, this is important, I want you to try again, that will will cause them to take that next step.
Another piece that I would also suggest is one, either limit alternatives. So if there is content that you can put directly in the employee app and just there and say it's available here, or it's available here for a month before you get it somewhere else, that can be helpful. Another area too is just ask the question, asking for the behavior that you want. So mapping, again, behavior change. So for example, when we were at Texas Instruments and we were rolling out an e-service portal for the first time, which is commonplace now, but back then it was cutting edge. We said, all right, the first time the customer calls us, we'll say, yes, we'll do it this time, but next time go to the portal. The next time they would email, so that's fine, but you've got to put it in the portal. And then the third one was, okay, we can't even start on this. I'm glad we had the conversation, understand the problem. I will start working on it as soon as you put it in the portal. So slowly building up those behaviors and really getting to the point that part of your role is to direct people to the proper channel so that you get the outcome that you want. If you're trying to change the behavior to go to the employee app first, hey, did you go to the app yet? Okay, you kind of like the tech support. Did you unplug it and plug it back in? Did you turn it on and off, kind of thing? Asking the basics. Did you go there? Where did you go? Did you find it? Okay, here's where you find it next time. Next time, please go there first. So really trying to ask for those specific behaviors and enforcing them every time will slowly get people to transition over. But that's a great question because that does happen a lot.
Yeah, I've got one as well, sort of a mix between those two, is getting your senior leaders to go in and exemplify good behaviors within the app as well. So if you're running something like a recognition program or something and nobody's getting any feedback on the app or things like that, then, they are not being rewarded in the sense of, amongst their peer groups and things like that. So if a senior leader goes in and you have called out, great job today, Renee, and then a senior leader comes in and backs that up, yeah, really great job. Things like that are really, really push that culture towards that communication tool being sticky.
Absolutely.
That's a great one. Okay, so the next one is assign ownership, owner in a team. And really, the owner here, that's got to be that senior leader who needs to be accountable for ensuring that you're getting the outcomes that you want. They need to be someone who has enough authority over the organization to divert some resources to it, to make it a priority among their staff, to make sure we're taking the efforts to drive it to the right channel. If you don't have that person today, perfectly okay to say, hey, we need someone who's going to take this on. For some organizations too, depending how large and how much of an investment it is, they can incentivize this person as a measurement of their performance review. If they have performance goals, have one of their goals be to get a certain amount of adoption out of the employee app, or a certain amount of business outcome from it, not say adoption as well too. But one thing that's important here is since you're going to have those measurable goals, performance goals and activity goals, you need to have someone who's going to measure those on a regular basis, identify that you have the data available to you. The person who collects the data and prepares that can be different than the person who is accountable. So you might have a system administrator helping with some of that, or someone who's responsible for all the content generation or executing the plan once a month. Come in, here's where we are, and then take them up to the owner who will reflect on those, will take action based on those. The administrator or whoever gathers that data can suggest steps that will improve the value that they're getting, improve adoption. So it doesn't have to be the same person who's doing the reporting. It's actually receiving those reports and taking action with it. And then really, as you're going through, if you are that senior person getting those reports and metrics, if there's poor adoption or poor usage amongst some people who report to different departments, maybe you go to their department leaders and say, hey, what can you do to help us get this adoption up, cascade it down. So there can be departmental goals, but it's got to be that executive person who's going to drive that through. So it's really important, though, that you do have someone who is of the right level to get there. I'd love to hear from everyone as well, too. Right now, do you guys have an executive sponsor who's accountable for realizing the business value and the outcomes that you get in the adoption? Or right now, is that pretty much left up to the administrative staff?
Emily, we'll get to your question in just a second, too. Another thing I would think about, and when you're thinking about your project team, right, and who's going to help you drive results, we've seen clients have some really great success with bringing people in outside of their department, right? So whether it's department leads across other parts of the business that have a stake in what's happening here. They're not just part of getting feedback, but they're also part of content planning, right? Bringing whatever content they're distributing out across different parts of the business into the app as well, right? So they have a stake, they have an ownership, they have something they're measuring against too. Are they able to get better reach by putting their communication and their information out through the employee app? But also end users, right? Having some champions out there in the business. Again, we've had a few teams that have had such great success with having people that are out in the plants, on the hospital floor, that are out there helping to drive the engagement, drive the adoption, listening to the feedback that is, coming from employees and bringing that back to the project team to talk about, hey, can we change this or can we try that? Or it can be such a powerful thing to have other people outside of your direct team that owns the experience be involved and have some of that personal ownership and accountability as well.
Yep, I think that's great. And thank you, Emily. See, our marketing team is responsible for pushing adoption and measurement, but we frequently ask leaders to push usage and direct people to the employee app for info. I think that's great. That reminds me of a couple of things. One, the single biggest driver of user adoption in most organizations is the immediate supervisor of the end user. And they are the ones who are with their team every day. They're the ones who manage their work, who set their priority, who measure their progress and performance reviews. And yet many times they are not directly engaged as a proxy and a catalyst for driving adoption. So I would urge each of you, as you're going forward, to think through how you're going to improve adoption. Part of it should be to set a target at the department level or at the team usage level, and prepare materials and engage with those supervisors and say, we need you to get your people to come here for these activities. We need you to get your people to regularly use the app for X, Y, and Z. Here's some steps to make it happen. Here's some specific requests and actions you can take. Here's some collateral to help you get there and to make people aware of it and to get them to download it. But you don't have to do it directly as your own team, out to everyone. Think of those proxies that you can use. Quick example, years ago, worked with one organization that was trying to reduce their travel costs and travel budget and instead convert more people to Zoom and online meetings like this, tools they had already invested in, and people still weren't getting on these things, and they're trying to get their meetings more through face-to-face communication. But they didn't set their teams a specific target to go and actually say, here's the dollar number of travel budget you need to reduce to do this. Before you book a flight, think, can we do this meeting via Zoom and save that time and effort? But when they started to set targets for each specific department, they got much better usage and results because they measured that and they were actually then looking at it and they were challenging the people at the frontline levels to make those changes. So I would encourage you to think through how you can do that at the frontline levels.
Yeah, that's excellent, Jason.
Okay.
And Andres put in a really great comment here that they've started to a process of location ambassadors to help in getting feedback from specific locations while also having the ability to post location-specific content to the app. Yeah, so they've identified some people that are all in, right? They're influencers across the organization. They want to help drive success. And so they're really embracing them and bringing into the project. So that's fantastic. Emily, I want to touch on your point on analytics too, because we're talking so much about data, right? We all need data to help us measure ROI. And you asked some questions about how are we going to continue to enhance our analytics that we're providing to you. And we're looking at ways to do that all the time. We know how critical that is. You asked specifically about can we create a way for you to drive some kind of personalized reports, templates that you can pull at any time. And that's definitely on our radar. I don't have a timeline for you just yet. We're going through some pretty big changes on the CMS coming up over the course of the next couple of quarters. But one of the things that we've talked about is, can we build out a system where you guys check the boxes, right? I want to see this, this by this location, by this date. And it will generate the file and send it your way. So definitely continue to share that feedback directly with what you want to see to Patty, Renee, and myself, and we will continue to push that through. But analytics will always continue to evolve because we know how critical that is for you to have that data.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go into number 3.
Yeah, conducting an assessment. So this is meant to be assessment at many different levels. So part of this is really more of an organizational assessment. What are those barriers that prevent people from using the system even if they want to? And we saw one was low response time. So that's definitely a barrier. Obviously, we're working on our end to improve the product speed and where it needs to go. But there's also sometimes network latency issues. We know in some organizations there's Wi-Fi blind spots, especially in some manufacturing clients that sound where can use it. Sometimes there's also just a data access, or in some organizations, there's language barriers or literacy issues in some of those areas. So try to understand what are the barriers, how you might get around those. And then I think the next one, obviously, not surprising, is the quick wins. How can you start small, start fast, start with the easy stuff that would be quick to pick up, and then build onto that? Feel comfortable being in the app, get people to see value in it. But also, I think, especially with a content-driven app, you do need to have those regular refreshes of content, of relevant content, to make people want to come back. And then obviously launch that through. But also, as you're rolling out new functionality, how does that impact current usage? Are there new activities you want people to do and new things you want them to go for, or new changes that you want them to make? Then also, there also be things, so like the new functionality, we have the SMS feature in the employee app now, which can really change how you engage with folks who are not app users, but still you need to communicate with them. So, Amy, I think we had a couple of good examples around bad weather, but people were using that as well, communicate shift changes. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the MLGW team on here if they want to share their experience. But definitely being able to push out updates to employees when you can create a safer environment for them, right? If your facility is going to be shut down, if your office opening is going to be delayed, those are great moments to be able to send a push notification, or now the new SMS alert direct out to employees to say, stay home, don't get out on those roads, and give them as much advance notice as possible so they can rearrange childcare situations and things like that. Or know that if the kids are home from school, they can be home too. They don't have to worry about finding childcare. So lots of different ways that you can use the app to drive that immediate usage as well. So even for the people that aren't necessarily going to go in and look at your news stories week over week, they will find that as a reason to have access to the service and to download it and get into it more frequently than maybe they would otherwise. And I'll leave the door open to Patty if you want to share anything more around that, or if the MLGW team wants to share.
Yeah, I think with messaging and stuff like that, I think you spoke about it earlier about, we like to see numbers and we might dwell on those numbers and things. But when you can attach a messaging system or a communication system to business goals, I think that is where it becomes really powerful. So for Memphis's example, as they're going through extreme weather at the moment. And for them to be able to communicate quicker to their employees so that they can go out and fix things quicker, which has a direct result for their customers being more satisfied. I think linking those things at the end of each year and things like that is super important.
Great, thank you for that. I think also a point of this to think through as you're marketing this out to your customers, and we talked about some of these use cases, is setting the expectation as well. You're going to want people to be in the app before they need the app. And what I mean by that is exactly what we're talking about here, if there's a weather situation, you should communicate our plan. We're coming into the weather season. We will be communicating via the employee app to let you know about shift cancellations. So please make sure you check there first before you get in their car. Remind them that message on a regular basis. This can also factor in whether it's SMS or the employee app, things of that nature, where God forbid, there's some sort of weather emergency, tornado, what have you, or in the world we live in today, an active shooter situation or some other unfortunate event where you need to be able to communicate in real time en masse to folks. The time for people to download the app is not in the middle of a crisis. The time for them to do that is beforehand and recognize this as part of it, and then get them used to going into their as part of that may be your disaster recovery process. That's also great. We'll talk to your IT team, say where do employee communications need to happen that we can filter through the app. Disaster recovery is a great one, something like that. So I think there's a lot of little things that you can do, but really try and get people to think ahead of, oh, this isn't just an optional thing. There's a lot of value here.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Daryl had a question here that I think ties into that answer as well. He said out of 2,000, about 1,600 of their employees are hourly. And a lot of feedback they receive is fear of Big Brother. Folks believing the company is tracking their location, probably tracking their usage. Any suggestions to counter this fear? And I think one of the big things is to show them the value add, how it will help them, how it will support them in being able to do their job more effectively, save them time by, again, knowing if there's changes, keep them safe. And, be transparent about there's not time tracking, there's not location tracking. We're not out there in, looking for where you are and when you are in the, office or online. It is to help create efficiencies for you as an employee, get you the information you need when you need it, because you're accessing everything else on your phone today too. So we want to use that as another resource to help drive your success.
Yeah, and I think, Daryl, with that one too, that's a really great case. I'm glad you shared that too. Is there's got to be the credibility of the sender, and if that isn't necessarily there, how you use us as a third party, a neutral third party, to help reinforce that message. So a couple things that could do would be we can actually put a statement FAQ on our website that says, "Can we do location tracking?" You can say, "Absolutely not. It's not supported right now." You can show that out as a link to the customer. You can do a brief demo of the use of your internal employees. Here's what the administrator sees when they're using the system. There's no reporting around that. So put your fears away. So I think, again, to Amy's point, share some information, but if we can help create information that will take that issue away from you, we're happy to do so as well too.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think those are all important things. Yeah. Moving on to part 4, building the plan. Try to break this up into 3 chunks. For new customers coming in before you go live, or if you're rolling out a new feature, new capability, or rolling out to a new user group, what is it to do before you even go live to prepare people for this? Let them know what's changing. Let them know the schedules and the time frame. Let them know expectations for adoption. Reach out to the supervisors and managers or executives of a different department. Say, these are your adoption goals. Here's how we're going to measure. But really get them prepared for that and have them help identify any barriers. At go live, and I usually think of at go live as like the moment that people first get trained for anywhere from 6 months to the first year afterwards. That's sort of that go live period. You're trying to build up those new behaviors. How quickly can you get people to switch over what they need to do to start using the app, or use it in conjunction with what they need to do? One of the things that I would encourage someone to do, especially someone who's charged with driving adoption, be prepared to be in there every day and specifically reaching out to individuals to correct behavior. Internally, Amy can tell you, we've got our CRM system and we've been evaluating our processes and updating things. And I'm in there every day. When someone sends me an email, I write back, please put this in HubSpot, and then I will talk to you about it. They put it in the wrong field. I say, this is in the wrong place because it's going to break these other functionality. Please do it the right way. And it's not, everyone's intending to do the right thing. And we're moving very quickly internally to change our processes, and people need that reinforcement and that behavior change to get them used to it. And what I've noticed, and having done this in many organizations, it's always a little rough for the first 2 or 3 months, and you need to be really hyper vigilant for that time. So really plan your work accordingly. But after you reinforce that for 2 or 3 months, folks get it, and their behavior changes and their habits change. So this is helping people to develop proper work habits, and having someone who can really stay on top of it, that's huge. And then coming back, after go live, really, what are those things in that longer term? Okay, we've been up and running, we've got people using it. What do we need to do to keep people using it year after year? If we see some backsliding in behaviors, that's a problem. You might see things where, oh, we did an acquisition and now we've got to get new people. They need to come through that habit change process. So there's a lot of things that will change. So really focus on that long-term piece of what you need to do.
And I would
so
include
just
onboarding in that too, right? So new employees, making sure this is a critical component of your onboarding system. And whenever possible, giving them access, right? So if you're doing, whether it's an import person orientation or you have some component of a digital portion of that, giving them their login information, allowing them to get into the experience right then and there. Because we don't have to change their behaviors. We can make this
Right.
what they do. We can make this their go-to habit when they start with our organization. We've even seen some clients successfully use the app for onboarding, right? Putting the materials there, the videos, the resources, making it an easy in your pocket solution for those employees to stay engaged and not have to remember, a million different websites that they need to go to. They can get to everything through their employee app experience.
Yeah, and I think that's a great one too. That as part of your onboarding checklist, you fill in your forms, and day one, download the app right now while we're here, and do a 2-minute tutorial on how to get that started. Is a great one, and letting people while they're going through their first couple of days getting used to work, come to the app when you have some downtime. Look through these resources. Give them a checklist of how to get started quickly to get acclimated. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Emily, it said that they've done a screen recording of a tutorial of how to use their ShepNet, which is their intranet and their employee app. And then they also provide some how to access in their orientation materials. That's fantastic. And if anyone needs help in how to create documentation like that, we can, jump on it and do that for you. We can show you how to do a screen recording or even do one on a more, if you allow us to, we can log into your app and do it for you in a few minutes and help you with those types of resources. So don't hesitate to reach out to us when you have a plan and you just don't know quite how to execute it. We're here to assist in that as well.
All right, so execute. This is obviously where the rubber meets the road. So if you've got a plan, what are you doing to look at adoption and usage communities and users and managers? There's a lot of formats you can do with that. Quite simply, if people are not using the app or not using it as intended, you need to have some feedback mechanism to get that to them and say, here's what we'd like you to do instead. Please do it by this date. Give them SMART goals and deadlines. Please start here by this date as well too. And similarly, if people are using it some, but there's opportunities for improvement, let's talk about what that needs to look like.
Kind of fly through these next couple ones, but I think the big one here is that last bullet about sharing your goals. We certainly ask for those as we're going through different stages of deployment. And sometimes we get caught up in other things and don't necessarily focus in on those. But I think it's important that we have open communication. And for any vendor partner that you're working with, to have that open communication about what it is you're trying to achieve and whether or not, first of all, are you able to measure it? And two, are you achieving it or are you not? And what levers do you need to pull, where you need to pivot strategies to help you get there? And that can change at any time. Somebody asked earlier, are these things going to shift as we're rolling? Yeah, they probably are. And even as your organization changes, something you have planned today in January might be totally different than where you end up in September because your company acquired someone that you weren't expecting. You had no idea that was coming down the pipeline, right? That's going to change the way you use technology in your organization. So share those changes, share those goals with your partner so that we can jump in and help you focus in the right ways. And we can make sure that every conversation we have is a meaningful one, and we're helping to drive that value with you. And if anybody within your organization wasn't able to join, please pass it along, share it with them too. And then certainly follow up if you'd like any, one-on-one conversation around this.
Great, thank you. Go for it. Do you want to lead us off, Amy?
Sure. I think that the big thing here is that it's okay to fail. Honestly, it's okay to admit when something didn't go the way that you planned it to go. Where you can get stuck in the trap is just to keep trying, right? Or to say, oh, those people just won't ever adapt the technology. Let's make sure we've done everything to try to pull them into that lane. Have we shown them all the value adds? Have we engaged the right people and influencers within kind of their network to help drive that change forward? One of my favorites here is engage your immediate supervisors. We talk about this on all of our deployment calls. If an employee goes to their direct manager and says, hey, what is this thing? Am I supposed to use it? And the manager says, I haven't downloaded it yet. Don't worry about it. you've lost that employee. They are not coming back. If it's not important to their direct manager, it's not going to be important to them. So make sure that part of your ongoing campaigns, but also part of your learning, is talking to those immediate managers, finding out the ones that are really successful in driving adoption. How did they do it? The areas and locations where you're struggling, why are they struggling? So that you can target in on some of those places to help move the needle and make a bigger impact.
I think that's a great one right there. And again, when I'm working with a lot of leaders of organizations, especially early on, I say, look, when people come to say this, I need you to say that. And I say it's not an if, it's a when. So end users will go to their managers, make sure they understand when this happens, here's how you respond appropriately. And here you can tell them the why, but also tell them the what and the by when. So I think those are some really important ones as well too. And we also talked about you will need to evolve your goals and planning over time. One area that can be really helpful is make yourself really incredibly valuable to other departments of the organization. So, for example, if there's a new strategic initiative to streamline sales, and that's going to be a new sales system coming out, maybe you say, hey, we can help with your communications around that. Let's put all that in the employee app. Partner up with your IT folks, not for the sake of getting the system live, but they're always tuned in with what are the big systems initiatives and changes where there's a lot of communication needs out to employees. Say, hey, we'd like to be part of this, and we can even help manage that content for you to make your project more successful. That will make you pretty indispensable as well too. If there's content and information needs to go out, find people that have the need that you solve their problem and invite them to really leverage you and drive people. So I think that is a big one as well.
I think the change management piece that Jason just touched on is really critical, right? Using this as a conduit for anything that is, impacting employees across your organization, as a means for FAQs, for Q&As, to drive training best practices, deliver executive videos out that encourage people to, make those changes, especially if it's something big happening at your organization that can create, chaos, confusion, anxiety for employees. Use this as a vehicle to not only get the information out, but to get it back from employees by encouraging them to provide feedback, to comment, to, engage with surveys and things like that. So I think a couple of other clients have put in some best practices there too.
I see you had the question about exploring another what's in it for me. One of the things too, for apps like the employee app, where a lot of this is we're trying to put, if you're going down the road of trying to build culture and engage employees for the sake of improved employee relationships and improved employee experience, it's going to be a lot of discretionary content out there that really will be a what's in it for me type situation. But if you are using the employee app for other things that are less discretionary, that are a core business process, so monitoring plant closures, using it for safety, using it for compliance, those sort of things, and try to get people away from just the what's in it for me message. You clearly need to explain how it will make things easier for them, but be really clear on the what's expected of you. And the message that I recommend for those non-discretionary areas is the job performance expectations have now changed as a result of using this new tool and this new process. What made you successful yesterday won't make you successful going forward tomorrow. Here's what it takes to be successful. Here's how we need you to use the app. Here's the process we need you to follow. And again, that kindness through clarity. So make some distinctions there between what's discretionary and where what's in it for me is really going to drive usage versus what's really core business process that people not following will be detrimental to the organization. And there wants the conversation to include, we think it will make your life easier and here's why, but also be very clear on the performance expectations and try to be very clear with that message as well.
But Casey also had a very tactical use case of digitizing forms, right? How can you make it easier for employees to get to resources that they need and submit things back to HR, IT, other departments within the organization. Just look at some of these key points we talked about today. And if you have just a couple of takeaways, I think one is definitely have those goals established, both for the technology specifically. So in this case, the employee app specifically, what are you looking to be able to measure to show success there? But then ultimately be able to level up to how is it driving business success? How is it, laddering up to our organization-wide goals? So when I sit down with my executive leadership team and talk about the amazing impact that not the technology had, but my team had on our organization this year, I can speak to that and I can show those results and that direct and even indirect impact. And then the other one for me on this is, don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that's from your vendor partners like us, or that's other people across your organization that have expertise in different areas. If you need marketing to help you support creating collateral for, your launch, reach out to them. If you need IT to be your testers because they're good with technology and you want to, get their experience first, ask them to be, part of that beta before you go live to everyone to make sure your instructions are accurate. Engage other parts of your business and engage other, people that are there to support you, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to help you drive success.
I would just agree with that last point in particular too, with your vendor partners. We are here, we have a team to help make you successful that would love to engage with you as much as possible. So please let us know how we can best serve you and what we can best do. And don't hesitate for a second to reach out to us. Really appreciate this and look forward to hearing from you all going forward. And so have a great rest of your day.